All right. Last video I made was incredibly embarrassing. My friend, he messaged me and he was like, "Dude, the audio's not working on your videos." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm such a freaking retard, and I forgot to cut my nails, so like this is even more embarrassing." So that was a side note. Anyways, so hopefully this video's better and the audio is a lot better. Hopefully I don't like move my head around and the audio goes in and out. I think I need a new mic. Anyways, I just wanted to make like a quick short video of like a funny situation that happened at work. Essentially like yesterday or today, and I was just thinking about it and it was like so random. So one of my coworkers came up to me and so she was like telling me about her daughter and how her daughter's like going her how her daughter's husband is going into her daughter's boyfriend is going into med school. And I'm like, oh, that's cool and stuff like that. And then I was like, how long have they been dating and blah 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 blah. And so she's like, oh yeah, they've been dating for like 2 years and whatnot. And we got into the topic of like, oh, like, he might be studying in Southern California while she's up in Northern California or something, right? And so it's like, turns out they've been doing long distance for like 2 years. And I am such a freaking retard. So I sometimes like don't think about what I'm saying, and so like it's just really bad. So essentially what ended up happening was I was like, um yeah, so how are they I mean, it makes sense that they're together because people aren't social anymore. I'm like, I didn't realize how stupid I was about to start sounding. And I was like, people aren't social anymore. Like after the pandemic, like people don't go out and stuff. So it's easier for people to be in long distance relationships. And fortunately, I didn't say this because I wasn't like retard maxing at that point. And so what I was implying is that like it's harder for people to cheat on each other because people aren't going out in public and meeting other people and making new relationships and new friendships because most people are like stuck home now, which isn't as much of the case now as it was maybe like 3 years ago. I think people are starting to acclimate and kind of get back to like the way things were pre-pandemic, but I don't think the entire thing has shifted yet. And so I thought about it and I was like, dude, I came off like such a douche. I'm basically saying like, yeah, it worked out because they haven't had the opportunity to like meet other people and like cheat on each other or something like that. Or basically like, yeah, they're probably like socially, not capable of just like, anyways, regardless, I felt pretty bad. And I thought about it and I was like, how true is that? Um and so I was like looking into it and it looks like it's kind of true. Uh Let me see. Let me take a look here. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. All right, so I was like looking around and then I saw that this video was interesting in pointing out like some of the dynamics between, or not the dynamics, but the changes that have occurred since online dating has become more prevalent and stuff like that. And so one of the things that this video talked about was that basically women are starting to pick more. The way she worded it in the video was like they're starting to pick more uneducated guys. They're starting to like settle for people that have a lower education than them, which kind of makes sense. I think it's like essentially common knowledge at this point that women are like starting to grind more than guys, or not necessarily that, but they're starting to put more value on their education than being like just staying at home and being stay-at-home moms and stuff like that, taking care of the kids and stuff like that. And so what she's about to say next is also interesting with regards to that concept. I mean, I have my own personal ideas of that, but essentially like, yeah, so women are starting to like not settle, but start, since they can make money now, they're like okay with dating people who may not be able to provide for them because they can provide for themselves. So how does that really affect marriage? I don't know. Let's
About
see.
marriage, we have answers to some questions about the sort of potential health outcomes. For instance, we observe that, especially in the mobile era, marriages are declining in regions where online dating has become more prevalent. And
So, marriages are declining in regions where online dating is more prevalent. So, that can mean a couple of things. So, when I was looking into this topic, one thing that, the whole point of this topic is like, people aren't cheating anymore. So, once they start getting into a monogamous uh, online relationship, um, then there's no temptation for them to cheat, right? Because these are people that maybe spend more time at home, online, work from home, stuff like that. So they're having less social I just kissed my mic. That was weird. They're having less social interactions, right? So with less social interactions, there's less likelihood of engaging in extramarital slash extra relational affairs. So that doesn't happen, right? So that's the argument I'm trying to make. But you know, there the counter argument to this is that people are actually able to cheat a lot more in online relationships. So why does that happen? So this is actually interesting because this is true for people that are, for example, I'm sure a lot of people know this as well. For like the top 1% of guys, they get all the girls on dating apps, right? And girls can pretty much get any guy in dating apps, like being an average looking girl. So I think that's essentially common knowledge now. I don't have to pull up any information for that. I think everybody knows that information. So that being said, um, for these individuals, it's a lot easier to cheat. So if you're like an average girl or just like a very, very good looking dude, you're just gonna like, if one thing doesn't work out, you're okay with going with somebody else, right? So that is definitely something that does happen. But if you're like an average dude and a girl is looking to settle down, so like this is kind of like the hinge sort of relationships, then I think though where both people sort of have a goal in mind, like the girl is trying to get married and the guy is like, he's probably not trying to like date around. He also wants to get married, but he's also not like, like a 6'4" Chad or something, right? So he's like not gonna cheat, and she wants to get married, so she's not gonna cheat. So that's kind of the situation I'm talking about. These other situations where, kind of what the data shows, like it is kind of easy to cheat and like people are just treating relationships like nothing. Those are for the those are for like people who are using these apps as like essentially just for feeling good about themselves and stuff like that, and just like hedonistic pleasure, I would say. um but I think for the people that are using these apps for long-term relationships, I think it's a lot harder for them to, I guess cheat is what I'm saying. So, but anyways, the concept about marriages not happening as much, I think that's just a general trend for people that use these sort of apps, I think. And I have my own personal biases against that. I think people that tend to use these kinds of apps probably lean more, I think, left, if I would say. I mean, I think people on the right probably also like with more traditional views probably do use these apps, but I think people that are more traditional are probably the ones that are kind of going out, meeting people and like forming these like relationships where they do want to kind of, get married and stuff like that. Um how accurate that is, I don't know. But this is another thing that I wanted to like talk about. But so lessons from H1N1 influenza pandemic 2009 demonstrated that social support is important for coping, recovery, loneliness, blah 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 blah. So video conferencing software, Zoom, private text based platforms, iMessage, WhatsApp, and social media outlets have allowed individuals to connect regardless of geographical constraints. These shifts have included the transition of cultural settings into virtual spaces such as virtual classrooms, virtual places of worship, and virtual communication platforms for social TV viewers. So essentially after COVID, there was like this huge transition into like not social media, but just a virtual like world. Um, and one of the funniest things was when Meta tried to make like that I forget what it was called, the metaverse. Yeah, duh. They tried making the metaverse, and that was a huge, huge, huge failure. So that was kind of funny. Big fail. But essentially, that didn't work out. Because I think humans in general end up going towards the natural way of things, or how things should be. We try to experiment with stuff, but like it always just ends up not working. At least that's what I think. Maybe, I mean, hopefully, or maybe I'll be proven wrong or something. Or I am being currently proven wrong. Um, so yeah, so that's essentially kind of what happened, and that's why we see this change in all of these like relational dynamics. Um, and it's funny because before I end this video, I've been yapping for too long. Um, I have this really interesting situation. So normally, I think you know girls typically get hit on more, and they typically get asked on more dates and stuff like that, right? So I have two friends. One of them is a guy, and one of them is a girl, and they both go to the same college essentially. And it's funny if they watch this video, it's gonna be awkward. And basically the guy, he goes in person, right? And the girl, she does just full like online. So in the past like 2 or 3 months, it's funny because the girl, I think she's playing this game with her friend, and they're planning on like they just want to hit 5 dates by the end of this year. And for a girl, that's so easy. That's like literally the easiest thing in the world. And for a guy, it's really like super hard. To be fair, my guy friend, full on no homo, he's an attractive looking guy. So the point I'm like gonna make may not be fully, accurate, um, or legit, but because of those variables, um, but regardless, um, he like he's gone on, I would say, 2 or 3, maybe like, yeah, 2 or 3 dates already, and it's only been like 2 or 3 months. And this is literally just from people in his class. Like he's just like talked to them, and they're texting, and like they're having that engagement, that social interaction, and then that builds into like, hey, you want to grab coffee and stuff like that. Whereas this girl, she's gone on, like, I wouldn't even count it as a date, because this was not even from school. This was from somebody that she also met in person. Maybe she's gone on like one, but it wasn't from school. So that just goes to show that like I think being in a social setting, like, it gives you the ability to form more relationships. And so as a result, say that you were in a previous relationship, or say that you're actively in a relationship, if you're in a social setting, uh then there's like more likelihood of you to maybe be in more relationships, and then as a result it gets, it can get a little tricky. Whereas if you're just living kind of like a virtual reality, and you don't have like you're not exposed to people continuously, um especially in the physical sense, then I think it's a little bit harder to cheat, unless you're a 6'4" Chad and like a bunch of girls are just like in your DMs and stuff like that. Or you're just like an average girl, and you're just like trying to make the best of your like 20s, early 20s. Then that's a different situation. But if you're looking for a long-term relationship, and you know, and you're worried that your future husband or whatever might, cheat on you or something like that, then I would say don't worry about it, especially if you do online dating and you find that person also doing online dating, I guess, if that makes sense. I've been yapping. My brain is kind of cooked. I just got back from work, so I hope this video made some sense, or was at least entertaining to watch. I know I wasn't looking at the right part of the camera for the whole time, but this is just an experiment. And yeah, all right, see ya, bye.